What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video at JDH Aquatics where we talk about anything aquariums related. It's been quite a while since I made a video, and with today's video I wanted to give you guys a quick update on all of the tanks as well as talk about some of the nano equipment that I run on these aquariums to keep them going. I'll put time cards on the video, so if you guys don't want to see the update and you just want to check out the nano equipment, then you guys can of course skip forward. But we're going to start off with just a quick update on each of these tanks, talking about some of the inhabitants we've added to the aquariums and some of the tweaks and changes of course for the tanks. So starting off with the 30-gallon, this tank has gone through a couple of changes for fish. We did have a flatworm issue with this aquarium. So we had red planaria, I believe is what it's called, just like a red flatworm infestation. And we did end up adding a Melanaris wrasse to this tank. The fish came a little bit larger than I was expecting. And at some point we do need to rehouse it, as it's already kind of too big for this tank, but it's definitely going to get to a size where we need to find a bigger aquarium for this thing to live in. We were sent some fish from a company called Reef Beauties. They sent us the Melanaris wrasse as well as a pair of true percula clownfish. And over time, the male of that pair ended up passing away. And about a week ago, the female ended up passing away. But as you guys can see, kind of hiding behind this toadstool here, we have a third true percula clownfish, and I do want to get another one to complete the pair, but I think the reason of why the first two ended up passing away is that they were getting bullied from the green chromis that are in here. So at some point we need to take out the green chromis as well and trade them in or find a new home for them, and then we'll get our second true percula clownfish to complete the pair. But as for the other fish, we've got the fire goby on the right side there. That fish is doing amazing so far. He kind of just minds his own business, but he eats really well and seems to be doing healthy. The green chromis as well, those are doing good. As I said, they may be bullying the clownfish. I still haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I think that's what stressed out the last two clownfish and, made them kill over. But the green chromis themselves are doing good as well. Now this tank of course is dominated with just softies. We have one piece of dragon's breath red macroalgae in there, but everything else is a soft coral, whether it's the sinularia, the mushrooms, the star polyps, or the toadstools. We also do have a gorgonia in the front there as well, and that thing seems to be growing quite a bit actually, which it took a few months for it to actually start growing, but now that it is, it seems like it's kind of taken off, which is awesome. All the corals doing amazing. I think it's getting to a point where we could probably frag up a couple of the sinularias and spread them across the other tanks that we have. But nonetheless, everything's growing in and looking really full. And this is definitely my favorite tank. It looks the most established, and I think it's probably the healthiest in terms of high nutrients. All the fish and all the coral are doing great, so no complaints here. Moving over to the left of the 30-gallon, this is an aquarium that you guys have not seen on the channel yet. If you guys follow my Instagram or my TikTok, then you've definitely seen some videos of this tank, but on YouTube for my longer form content, you guys have not seen this tank yet. This is the Reef Casa 12-gallon studio, so it's the same footprint as their 6-gallon like lagoon Pico, but it's 11 inches tall instead of 7. So it's a 12-gallon aquarium all in one, of course, and we have this tank set up for anemones. This is going to be our nem only tank, and as you guys can see in there, we do have a rose bubble tip as well as a green bulb. You could probably zoom in a little bit so you can see the rose bubble tip there, but the green bulb has been moving around for the past week. We've only had him for about 2 weeks, and he was tucked up underneath the back rock, and you virtually could not see one bit of him. But now he's kind of moved over to this right side and really wedged himself in between these rocks. And I think he likes his foothold there, but it's a little bit easier to see him where he's at, but I would love for him to come up a little bit more in the front. But I can't complain because, like I said before, we couldn't see him at all, but now we've got a little view of him, which is awesome. Since you guys haven't seen this tank, the equipment that we're running is the NewSyke K7 Mini, which I've covered before on the channel. We've got a simple return pump and heater in the back, and then later in the video we're going to be talking about this wave maker here from Higer. That's one of the nano pieces of equipment that we're going to be talking about, but it creates a really good flow for this tank, and I think the anemones enjoy it. As for care and feeding and all of that, we feed the anemones about every other day, which I think seems to be making them happy. They're usually out and, fully open and stuff throughout the day. And yeah, they seem to be healthy and happy. Moving over to the 20-gallon Nuvo, this tank has kind of gone through a couple different iterations. We had this tank set up with some softies in it with the rose bubble tip, and this is supposed to be primarily our LPS tank. And over time, I think we are deciding that we're going to add some softies. So I mentioned before that we want to frag up some of the Sinularia from the 30-gallon and start trickling it into these other tanks, but more so the 20-gallon, because we do have a few pieces of LPS in there. We've got the Duncan, the green bubble, and a couple different pieces of Euphilia. But I think just to fill it up a little bit more, we're going to add some softies to the bottom section of the rock. And we're still going to add in a few pieces of LPS. We want to make a Euphilia garden on the right side, but I think we just have so many softies, and I love softies to begin with, that we want to just kind of put them in all of the tanks. So as you guys can see, we do have a couple pairs of toadstools on the bottom there, and they seem to be doing okay. They were getting shaded by the other coral in the 30-gallon, so we just took them out and threw them in this tank. And like I said, they haven't opened up fully, but I'm hoping over the next few weeks, the polyp extension will be much better and we'll get a little bit better color out of them as well. Inside of the tank, the pair of nearly naked black ice clowns are still doing good, and you might be able to see swimming around there. We have a new 6-line wrasse. I was worried that we were going to get the same flatworm issue in this tank as we did in the 30-gallon, because we're using a little bit of the rock from the 30 as well as taking some of the coral. So if any of those flatworms got over into this tank, I wanted a wrasse to help and regulate that. And we've had him for about 2 weeks now, and constantly throughout the day I can see him picking out the rocks and just eating up any of the pests that are inside of the tank. He's about 2 inches, extremely colorful, and a really beautiful fish. I think a great addition for any aquarium, but he seems to be doing good so far, and he gets along great with the pair of clowns that are already in here. And last but certainly not least is the 6-gallon mangrove tank, which aside from the 30-gallon, I would say is equally my favorite tank. It's very easy to take care of, and it just gives me so much joy seeing the mangroves grow. So this is the 6-gallon Reef Casa Pico. Again, it's the same footprint as our 12-gallon NEM tank, but it's the lagoon style, so it's only 7 inches tall, which I think makes it a perfect tank for these mangroves. I would love to get a couple more seedlings of these mangroves to grow out, a few more trees. I just need to find some at my local fish stores, but we've got the cleaner shrimp in there, still doing good. A couple soft corals, I think it's just mushrooms in there. And then we've got a random little ball of Chaeto in the front. But this tank's been doing amazing. We did end up cutting the tops of the mangroves to promote some branch growth. So it's gonna be really hard to see. I'll try to get a close-up shot here in a second, but we do have some new branches growing on top of the mangroves. So you guys might be able to see these 2 little pieces here, and then this leaf is covering it up. But on the same one here, we've got some new branches growing on the tops, which it's been maybe 3 weeks since I've seen those kind of pop out, and it's been a very slow process seeing them grow, but nonetheless, I think they're doing good. We've got great root structure as well, and even the height on the new mangroves, they're still growing vertically aside from these new branches, so they are growing. It's just a very slow process. We did add an ATO to this tank as well as the 20-gallon here, which we'll talk about that piece here in a second. But aside from that, I don't think we're going to be doing really anything more to this tank aside from possibly adding a couple more mangroves to it. I did want to get maybe another cleaner shrimp so that he's got a buddy in there, but other than that, this tank really is just on autopilot, especially now with the ATO. I do a water change once every 2 weeks, do a little bit of dosing and feeding, and other than that, it's pretty easy. Now the last part of this video, I wanted to touch on 2 pieces of nano equipment that I use for these tanks. The first of which is going to be this Smart Micro ATO. I got it from a company called Angel Aquariums, but this one in particular is from Auto Aqua. This is their newer version of the Smart Micro ATO. I have the old one that's running on the 6-gallon, but this new one we just set up on the 20-gallon, so we're definitely going to be talking about that. And then for the second piece is the Haiger Nano Wave Maker. This is their smallest wave maker that you can get. It's the smallest one that I've really seen on the market. I thought it was going to be the J-Bow SLW10, but this one's probably half the size and it still puts out a ton of power. So if you are looking for something for a smaller application, this is a great option. So let's get into them. Starting off with the ATO from Auto Aqua, this is their newer version where they have the actual pump inside of the module, which is connected to the sensor there. But instead of the pump being in the reservoir, it's attached to the module itself, and it pulls water up from the reservoir, and you've got an inlet and an outlet as well as the sensor all connected. So it's a smaller unit. It's a little bit noisier than having the pump in the reservoir. So I'm not too sure how I feel about that with it being in my bedroom, but it's less parts and it is a little bit cleaner of a design, even though you can kind of see it on the back there. Whereas the older one, we've got the sensor and the tube there with the pump that actually sits in the reservoir down here. So we've got both options. I'm still playing around with each of them to see, which is, I guess, better. I don't even think you can get the older version anymore, but very easy to set up. It came with, all the right bits and pieces. There is actually a filter piece inside of the reservoir, so if any debris gets into there, it won't get pumped up into your tank. I think this is a good application for a nano tank because you don't have much space to begin with back here, and having the pump and the sensor all in one is very easy instead of having, a large sensor or a large float valve. And finally, for our last piece of equipment, we've got our Haiger Nano Wave Maker. This again is a very compact pump, great for a nano size application, but it still puts out a decent amount of flow, which in some instances can be good because you of course want high flow, but if you need it for a small application, you can turn it down so that you're not, stirring up a bunch of sand or kicking over your coral. So for this 12-gallon, we have it on the lowest setting, and as you can see, there is a good amount of flow inside of the tank. It's not your traditional style, 10-gallon where it's 20 inches long. I think it's 15 inches from left to right, so you can use that as a reference, but we've got it on the lowest setting with the lowest speed, and I think we have it on just like a basic wave pattern, so it's kind of got that gentle back and forth motion. And for it being in the anemone tank, I did want, a little bit more flow inside of here for the anemones, and I think they like it. The pump does come with an anemone guard, or just like a little sponge filter that goes around it so that their tentacles don't get caught up in it. I haven't seen them go near it, but it's there for precautionary reasons, but it's nice that it does come with that little filter. Figuring out the controller was a little difficult. I did find a YouTube video from a guy that was very helpful on how to figure out, how to set it up, but there's 5 times of the day that you need to set, and I have it consistent throughout the day. It's all one speed and one wave pattern, but you can set up different times a day to create different flow patterns. I actually do have a second one here, and this is the first one that they sent me before, sending me that one. And I think this might have just been a faulty unit because it kept giving me an error code kind of for no reason. So I've been running this one for about 2 or 3 weeks now, trying to just give it like a reliability test, and it seems to be holding up really well. I think a big part of that is maybe adding that anemone guard so that nothing gets caught inside of the propeller. We are going to try and add this back into the 20-gallon with that same guard on it to see if it'll work and stay working. The 2 biggest takeaways for me with this pump is that it's small in diameter. It's a very small pump if you need it, again, in a small application. And then the flow it creates can be low if you want it to be. I have it again on the lowest setting, and I think it can go up like another 5 or 6 notches. But if I did that, it'd probably be kicking around a bunch of sand. But for the lowest setting, I think it creates a really good flow for such a small aquarium. So if that's something you're looking for, this is a great option. I will link the Haiger website as well as their Amazon link in the description below if you guys want to check out this pump. As you guys know, I love my nano tanks, but sometimes it's kind of hard to find smaller pieces of equipment to help run these aquariums. I'll put all of the links in the description below if you guys want to check them out. Again, a huge thank you to Haiger for sending us the Wave Maker, and a huge thank you to Angel Aquariums for sending us the Auto Aqua ATO. Thank you guys for watching. I will be sure to see you guys in the next one.